Is Sony being a bunch of lazy bums, or are they evil geniuses? All that and more coming up here on The Morning Jolt. What's up, guys? Marbach here, the master of hype, hyperbole, and hysterics. Today we're talking about Sony. So now that Nikon and Canon have got their pretty much cameras and stuff all out of the way, it's time to start wondering what the hell Sony's going to do. Apparently, Sony does not even have a press conference scheduled for Photokina this year. Now, they did the same thing a few years back with the Sony A6500, and then I happened to show up at the press release that they had down in Austin, Texas, which was roughly like 2 months later. It actually was in November when that went down. So I'm not for sure if that's what they actually have planned or if they're going to do something completely different. Just let, Canon and Nikon and everyone else go ahead and announce all their ish, and then go ahead and do something all by themselves so that they can soak up the Sony spotlight. And honestly, that might actually be a really good idea. While everyone else is trying to figure out, well, who's got the better this and who's got the better that and blah, 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 blah. Honestly, I don't think a few days is really going to make a difference. Maybe it does when it comes to the hype cycle. Apparently, most people are thinking that the brand new Sony A7000 or A6700, something to that effect, is going to be released, and I am actually very interested in what they are going to release. I have always found Sony to be an extremely cutting-edge company. While most people say that they are not a camera company, that they are a consumer electronics company, it doesn't dispel the fact that there are millions upon millions of people out there not only shooting images and photographs with Sony cameras, but they are also making a shit ton of money off of those cameras. Some people can argue that they don't really like the colors or the hues or whatever, but it is undeniable that Sony has made some amazing products, and they are crushing the market right now, especially with the recent release of the Sony A7 Mark III. What they were able to cram into that camera and still manage to offer it probably at a loss, all for the price tag of $2,000, is pretty miraculous. But I prefer the smaller form factor cameras almost every single time. It's not to say that I won't shoot with a camera that's got a bigger body. I mean, big and thick ain't bad, but being able to pick that ish up, that says something too. So there are a couple of rumors going around that the Sony A7000 might have a completely different body. I'm calling it the A7000 just because we don't know what the hell it's called. But from here on out, whatever this new camera is going to be called, I'm calling it the A7000 for now. Personally, I prefer that it be in the same vein as the A6300 and the A6500, but I would prefer it to be just a tad bit bigger so that it does not have the overheating problem anymore. But that's just me. I mean, some people don't record much video and they can get away with those smaller bodies and it doesn't pose a problem to them whatsoever. Again, I would also really, for once, for real, like to see one of these cameras. This is so good. This camera is so good. The size is so good. I want to see a fully articulating screen. English, mother effers, do you speak it? I want a flippy, tilty screen. Give it to me. Give it to me. I dare you. I'll give you a lot of money if you do. And realistically, I want to see not only the heating or overheating, the lack of overheating. I just want it to not overheat. But on top of that, I would also like to see a vastly improved battery. Put the Z battery in this camera. Design a grip, however you got to do it. Put the Z battery in this camera. This form factor would be so small, so lightweight with that Z battery. If you had the ability to turn off the screen, the LCD, and the EVF while you're shooting or whatever, be able to turn the one off that you don't use, much like the Fuji system. I can switch between EVF, sensor, LCD only, all those things, and I can get exactly what I want based on the needs at the time. If I need that third point of contact, if I just want to look at the LCD, that would be awesome. But yeah, with the flippy screen and being able to touch the entire interface, Sony's menu system is so in my opinion, I think it demands to be a touch system interface. It is too vast, too clunky. It needs to have some touch. Now, I know that they put the quick menu in there and all that, but and it's good. It really is. It's good. I have the same gripe with Fujifilm's cameras. They need a touchscreen as well. Theirs is actually so good that having a touchscreen on their cameras would make it just out of this world. Sony's is so bad, it absolutely cannot afford not to have a full touch interface. As many of you all may remember, in the Sony A6500, that touch layer, which was horrible by the way, reduced visibility of the screen to such an extent that it was almost unusable even indoors. But because it had such great autofocus and it was so small, light, and portable, a lot of wedding videographers, loved using it because it was so much easier to put on a gimbal and fly that thing around the event that it made it the ideal size for that kind of work, especially when you compare the image quality to price ratio. Granted, the camera was APS-C, but the low light performance was completely usable even in extremely high ISOs, even like 12,000. Like, it was really good. And I would not be afraid whatsoever to throw any old light lens on that camera and crank that ISO up. It never really showed up. So I would still like to see that level of performance in this camera. To be perfectly honest with you, if this camera had even just 90% of the features that the Sony A7 Mark III has, obviously it's not going to have a full frame sensor in this camera. That's reasonable, understandable, doesn't bother me. I'm an APS shooter already, so no big deal. But if they were able to put the vast majority of what is inside the A7 Mark III into this camera body and put the flippy screen on there and touch that interface all up, man, I would buy this thing in a second. I have complete and total confidence, honestly, in the Sony line of autofocus tracking features that I have no problem using it. I use the Sony cameras religiously with no flippy screen whatsoever because I could trust that autofocus system. So in theory, I didn't really need the flippy screen, but God, it is so nice to be able to flip out that screen and just make sure that your composition looks good. And I know, I really do, I have absolutely no doubt that when this camera comes out, I believe it's going to have 4K, 60p, and 120p in 1080. I mean, they're going to have to do that just to compete with Fuji. Fuji is about to knock it out of the park with their X-T3. Sony's going to have an answer to that because this particular camera, while their A7 III pretty much takes the cake when it comes to the Canon and Nikon offerings now. Sad days. But Sony's APS-C line of cameras has to compete against Fuji. And Fuji actually has a real APS-C lens lineup. Unfortunately, Sony couldn't give two squirts of piss less about their APS-C lineup, which is unfortunate because most of their APS-C lenses were of pretty good quality and super duper small and lightweight. Both things that I appreciate, but I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm genuinely not. I don't think that it's even worth holding my breath for, but it's not as if you can't buy some Sigma lenses. Sigma is definitely filling in those gaps. They are innovating and creating some decent quality lenses, and those have been the ones that I think most people are leaning towards these days, especially the 16mm f1.4, the 30mm f1.4, even the 19mm and the 60mm are both fantastic and good performing lenses. Some of the sharpest you can get for the Sony E-mount line of APS-C bodies. But as long as Sony does not hold back like Canon and Nikon have clearly done, if they would actually put the stank on this camera, this thing will be an absolute powerhouse. That combined with the Fuji, those two cameras would rock the crop sensor camera lines. I mean, it really would. There would be almost no competition. You know it, and I know it, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles, kids. Meanwhile, all you full-frame shooters going around like, dude, bro, dude, you can't shoot anything with a crop sensor. Mother effer, you a lie. Everyone keeps crying about low light performance, and I mean, honestly, it's not there. Granted, it's not nearly as good, but it ain't that bad neither. As I've said many, many times before, the average consumer, the average bride, and all her fam and all them, they would never in a million years know the difference between what you did better with your full frame than what we did with our APS-C. So, question of the day, what do you all want to see in the Sony A7000 camera? What is going to be the most important features to you? What do you want to see them actually incorporate that makes this the perfect travel, do almost anything camera? This is what we've been waiting for. Come on, Sony, do it to us. Give it to us, baby. Give it to us so hard. Don't hold back. Don't do that. Do the right thing and do all those nice things. Do those nice things. Do that flippy screen. Do we want a flippy? Hell, I wouldn't even care if you stole the flippy kind of screen from the Fuji X-T100. That would be off the chain. Steal that shit, Sony. Steal that. Alright guys, so that's all I've got for you all today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to thumbs up this video, leave a comment down below, and if you love that shit, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. That would be awesome. At any rate, thanks for stopping here at the Morning Jolt on the Photo Video Show. I'm your host, Mark Puckett, and I'm going to see you guys again on the next one. Peace.